welcome to the regular council meeting for Tuesday, May 2nd. It's currently 7 o'clock. Before we get started, the Village of Anmore would like to open our meeting by recognizing the many Indigenous people of our area, including the following First Nations, with communities that are located in the region that we now know as Metro Vancouver: Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Coquitlam. Further, we would like to honor the important place in history occupied by the many territorial keepers of these lands and waters around us since time immemorial. Call the meeting to order. Approval of the agenda. The recommendation would read
that the agenda be approved as circulated.
Someone to move that? Moved. Seconded. Any discussion? See none. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Public input. Public is permitted to provide comments to council on any item shown on the meeting agenda. 2 minute time limit applies to speakers. Anybody want to come forward?
Hello.
Your name and address.
Is the blue light on? Bruce Hitchin, 900 Canterwood Court. I just wanted to clarify something after last council meeting. At the last council meeting, you presented a video on the new Village Hub, which I produced on behalf of the village. Now, following that meeting, the Anmore Alternative reported that the budget for the video was $75,000. I wanted to make sure that that was corrected. And I know that the village staff corrected that information with the Anmore Alternative, and it has since been revised. But I wanted it to be clear and on the record, because people would have read that, and I don't want people thinking that I did a video and charged the village for $75,000. The fact is that I was asked to produce the video as an Anmore resident. I budgeted the project at $7,300, which would be considered a fair market value for that video. And this was a fairly involved project. It took multiple days to shoot with drone footage and a number of interviews, footage of at the existing village hall, and as well as covering the groundbreaking ceremony. Now, it was too large of a project for me to do completely pro bono, but I did extend a huge discount. So in total, my company, Direct Impact Media, billed the village for $2,350 plus GST for the production of that video. It was a bit of a discrepancy from $75,000. I don't want my friends thinking that I'm taking advantage of my position here in the community. But something else I'd just like to add, and in producing that video, I got to interview John and Kim and find out a little bit more about the project. It was very insightful to me. And I know that you have, as council, have faced opposition to many decisions and initiatives that you have taken on. And while you can't please everyone, working on this project...
If you could just start wrapping it up.
Yeah.
Thanks.
You know, you can't please everyone, but working on this project made it clear to me that you're all doing the things that are necessary to move the village forward and doing it for the right reasons. It takes a lot of fortitude to embark on a project like that and see it through to the end. And I would like to let you know that your work and commitment to the village is acknowledged and appreciated by some, including myself. So I wanted to leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other public inputs related to something on the agenda?
Good evening. Will Crocker, 2045 Leggett Drive, for those of you that don't know me, good to see you. I've got 2 items. One is just a follow-on item from the public hearing that was a couple of meetings ago.
This is only for things that are on the previous, that are on
Yes.
the agenda.
And I had asked a question in council, and the answer was that I'd asked information about the subdivision. It was actually to make the lots infill, and I'd asked about the layout of the lots and where the house would be sited, and I was told that that information was online, and that information was
Well,
not.
I'm gonna have to tell you, this is not on the agenda. That public input has to be items on this agenda.
Mhm.
Otherwise, if you can wait till the end of the meeting for
And
public
I asked you
questions.
during the last public hearing,
Yeah.
and the answer you gave me was incorrect.
This
and
is-
so I'm stating that.
Sorry,
I'd
this
like
is
that
different than a
information
pub,
corrected.
this is different from a public hearing. This is the council meeting.
Yes.
Yeah.
And a council meeting, you can accept that request, that I'd like that information corrected. So I'm gonna stand on that, and I'd like that information posted that was related to the infill, where the position of the homes would be.
Ms. Elbert?
Sorry, I would just like to add that after the close of public hearing, there can be no further information received regarding the public hearing. So if you do have a question related to citing or anything on one of those technical questions, you can certainly contact Chris Boyd. His email information is on the village website.
Yes, and so I'd like everybody to know that that information, when I was told it would be posted publicly, I was told at the council meeting that it would be posted publicly, and it was not posted online publicly.
I'm
And so
sorry.
that should be corrected.
Mr. Boyd, I don't know exactly what's being referred to here.
Yes, and
Let's just let him finish, please.
So in relation to house, position of houses on lots, that is not something that we look at, and particularly at rezoning. Rezoning states the requirements within that zone and not where the property is going to be placed. That is a subdivision requirement. So that's probably why that particular information is not online for your question.
right. So there's more than a question for Chris. I'll follow up with you, and in future, I'd like council to have that information posted online. There was several details about the infill.
Just to correct you, it won't be posted online on this one or future ones because it's not to do with rezoning.
As it affected the drainage in the area, as it affected how the lots were laid out.
It doesn't relate to rezoning.
Yeah.
In the infill,
It does not relate to
it is a
rezoning.
serious consideration, and for somebody giving public input, that information was not
And
there.
there was an opportunity to provide public input when we had first two readings of it, and we did the postings with Mello as well.
And so, as you know,
But
I asked that question during the public input. I was told that information was online for review, and it was not online for review. So I'll leave it at that, Tom.
Excuse me, I got this. The input that was provided for the input was a special council meeting, a special hearing, and that was when input was. It wasn't at a later date at a council meeting to provide that input. And I think Mr. Boyd has clearly decided that doing a rezoning, we don't get into that sort of technicality. So, you're more than welcome to reach out again.
So you've made decisions without
That's
adequate
not
information.
Sorry, that's not what I'm saying. So, anyway, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks.
Right. And do you have another statement, unless somebody else wants to go ahead?
It has to be regarding what is on this
And
agenda.
it's related to this.
Okay, okay.
I just wanted to offer anybody else.
Okay.
Okay. And there just had a question that maybe council could address. For the traffic operation and road safety.
This is only public input. This is not a question and answer period.
Yes, statement for you. So for the traffic operation and road safety review, I'd like council to consider that as you approach Bunsen Lake, you now have hard curbs on the sidewalks and the edges, and it doesn't give cars the opportunity to pull out of the way if you're trying to get around a car or there's an emergency vehicle coming. And so I'd like that to be considered when they do the road safety review, and that's just my comment for it.
Good, thank you. Any other public input? Okay, we'll move on to delegations. Now that's Lee Enterprises. Jordan Birch.
Oops, sorry. Forward. Choose snap. Thank you. Yes, this is
Do you want to tell us?
Okay.
Is there a, okay,
No, it's just by manually touching the laptop.
okay.
Okay.
Unless you want help.
Yeah.
Is that all right?
No, it's
Good evening, Your Worship and councillors and staff. Thank you for the opportunity to do this delegation. Here to provide a 9th annual Ugly Christmas Sweater Dash wrap report from our event last December 2022. Thank you very much for supporting the event. I got to start off by saying it truly takes a village. We were able to pull this event off in 23 days. We had an amazing turnout of community partners, sponsors, and volunteers. And without their involvement, our event just wouldn't work. Right off the bat, I'd also like to say a special thanks to our community partner, Iconic Properties. Without them stepping up, to be honest, we just wouldn't be able to pull this off and create the experience that we wanted to for our guests. So thank you for that. Highlights from the 9th annual dash include we raised $2,000 for Act 2 Child and Family Services in Coquitlam. Together we help fund programs that help children, youth, and adults rebuild their lives through counseling, education, and housing support. Thank you, Polly, for that recommendation on that wonderful local charity. So to date, over 20 years of hosting Ugly Sweater events, including the original Ugly Sweater party at the Commodore Ballroom, we have now raised over $275,000 since 2001, including supporting other organizations like the Children's Wish Foundation of Canada and Make-A-Wish Foundation. That's fun. We also had 15 additional community organizations and sponsors that contributed to the event with their time, treasure, and talent, and in-kind donations to add holiday spirit to the festival site. And we had some councillors and our mayor, public works, and village staff on site as well. So thank you for that. Most importantly, we had 55 volunteers, and without volunteers, we just couldn't do this. In terms of registration, we had 230 people registered. We're thinking that next year we'll be able to double that. So we're just going to flip through a few photos here. Sure, let's start there. The good, the bad, and the ugly. Okay, Karen. A little piece of history here for you. So the pandemic is over, we're able to host live events, thank goodness. Here we are. So this is our team. Just for a few people that have asked some questions over the last year. Myself and Grace Troy Events are the ones that are executing this event. I've been a volunteer for over 20 years in my role. And Chris in the bottom right there in red has been my partner. And our operations lead, Colleen in the top right corner, which some of you may recognize. She's been our only staff under Grace Troy's umbrella that works on this project full time. That's me on the right. So 20 years ago, that's how it all started, and my family on the left. Moving forward, Karen, we really just wanted to bring families together, and I'm very fortunate to have the support of my family. On the screen here, it says thank you to our volunteers. One of the first people that stepped up was Paul Webrink to help us actually build the sign, so thank you, Paul. Here we are collecting in Spirit Park. And then the dash starts. Polly is saying, wow, now that's ugly. I'm not sure if she's in shock or amazed or just fixing her glasses. And there we go. So most of the rest of the slideshow is really just a collage of photos. I'll comment on a few, but a couple of key moments in that last one, Karen. On the bottom right is a new family to Anmore. JP from Colombia and his wife Diana from Venezuela and their son Julian. This is one of their first events that they got to attend in Anmore. That's pretty special. So I mentioned volunteers earlier. We have 55. So we had course marshals, our MC was a volunteer, our dance lead was a volunteer. We had volunteers at registration. And our lovely Sabina, who a lot of the village staff know, stepped up to be our volunteer coordinator day off. So that was a huge help. So thank you, Sabina. Just a shout out to Public Works, because they did provide a lot of cones and barricades for us to have a safe route, and they put those out on Friday afternoon for us to decorate the course on Friday night. And I will acknowledge all village staff as well, because behind Mayor and Council and behind Public Works is an amazing front-end admin staff. And so I know everybody touched this event at some point, so thank you. Again, Icona stepped up. They had a pretty key role. It's kind of a deal breaker, and that is they are providing bottomless hot chocolate for everybody. What happens after that? Well, let me show you. That was my son after 4 cups of hot chocolate. That says Hot Chocolate 101. How to drink a hot chocolate with whipped cream. That's yummy. That's little Mary. And another quick acknowledgement, we did have over 15 vendors and sponsors. Particularly at this moment, I'd like to shout out to Carrie and Darren Smurthwaite, just because of their generosity in supporting, covering some of the costs of the event, which really helped our bottom line. Thank you. And Saskatchewan Volunteer Fire Association was out to cook hot dogs and spread cheer. And again, Polly and Mary Vellani from TD. Mary actually stepped up the night before to be our registration lead, which is always a bird's nest, so thank you, Mary. So it is an untimed run. Some of the only kind of negative feedback I got was really from our good friend Brian, who complained that it wasn't actually 5K, it was 4.3K. And I had to remind him that it was an untimed run, and that I'll look into the course route next year. We did have to cut a piece of the course out because of the cold weather and ice that was forming on the trail behind the campground. So, sorry, Brian. Ugly sweaters, the gal on the left took home with the pug sweater and our sweet little Christmas snowy sleigh scene there on the right for Ugliest Kid Sweater, trophies included.
Jordan, can you start to that?
Absolutely, yeah. So group sweater award. You can just keep going, Karen. Maybe just pause on the back one. Last one. Yeah, one more. Thanks. One more. Yeah, this slide's, if I could end it here, as you can tell, we've got a lot of diversity in the folks that we attracted to our event, including seniors. That's my dad on the lower right. He's actually living with bone marrow cancer, and my father-in-law on the red. Despite their facial expressions, this event brought them out. My father-in-law's got 2 new hips. And meeting with some of the other elderly people in the neighborhood, I think it was really cool to have an event that attracted all demographics. So we're going to continue that next year. I do have one comment to say before I close. Karen, if you just want to flip it forward. I've mentioned some, you can just pause it there, thank you. So you've seen some of the good, you see some of the bad sweaters. Let's talk about the ugly. My team's amazing at creating experiences. We brought the Dash to our hometown here. We're going to keep it here for years to come. We're not perfect. We do make mistakes. We strive for transparency. But I would just really appreciate those that have any questions or constructive criticisms to bring those to my attention as opposed to bringing them to a public forum first, particularly council meetings or Facebook, because that's extremely impersonable. And I'm a pretty approachable and public person, so it's pretty easy to spot me. So yeah, for those that are listening, I would just really appreciate that, because my team worked really hard to pull this off in a short amount of time, and this event is staying in Anmore, and it's going to grow. And if you could switch to the last slide, we have a save the date for Saturday, December 2nd. We're moving it to the new hub if it's ready. And we'll be having a pancake breakfast, and proceeds will be supporting the Saskatchewan Volunteer Fire Association. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I can tell you I was there, and it was certainly, as George said, it was a mix of people throughout the village. It was an amazing response, and I think I've gone to almost every single one of them. They were down in Port Moody as well, and the money raised is certainly going to some good venues, so well needed. Okay, we'll move on now. Minutes of the regular council meeting held on April 18th. Can I get someone to move those minutes? Move, seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Is there any business arising from those minutes? Seeing none, we'll move on to legislative reports, ride hauling and intermunicipal business license bylaw. Ms. Doherty.
Thank you. So this bylaw was before council for the first 3 readings at the last meeting. So the resolution this evening would be that council adopt Anmore Intermunicipal TSM Business License Agreement Bylaw 678/2023 and Anmore Transportation Network Services Business License Bylaw 679/2023.
Can someone move adoption? Move seconded. Open up for any questions, comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you. We'll now move on to 9B, the 2023-2027 Annual 5-year financial plan. Ms. Doherty.
Thank you. Again, this was before council at the first 3 readings at the last meeting. So the recommendation this evening would be that council adopt Anmore 5-year financial plan bylaw 680/2023 and the council adopt Anmore tax rates bylaw number 681/2023.
Could someone move that recommendation adoption? Move it second. Open up for questions. Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Would you like to vote? Register as a vote? No? Okay. Carries. Thank you. We'll now move on to 11A new business, official community plan amendment process. The report dated April 26, 2023 from Mr. Boyd, Manager of Development Services, attached. Mr. Boyd.
Thank you, Worship. This report's being brought in front of you tonight due to Council Direction given on April 18th regarding the OCPMM process. So staff have gone away and we've looked at a number of other municipalities and tried to put together a process that might be appropriate for the village going forward. So I'll just give a general overview of my report and then take questions. Just for general context, the OCP is the village's statement of objectives to guide future land use and address related needs for amenity services and infrastructure support. So in general, the OCP is a very high-level policy document that gives us a guiding light towards any zoning policies within the village and how the public would like to see the village go forward. So obviously a very important document and something that isn't set in stone, that can be amended as time goes forward. But to amend an OCP document, it has to be amended by a bylaw. And there should be a process in place. There's one currently in place for if it was led via a council. However, we don't really have a process in place if a developer came forward and asked for a change to our OCP amendment. So this report is trying to highlight the reasons behind why we should have such a circumstance, and then some general policy statements and some requirements for this amendment. Okay, so generally, an application for an amendment to OCP should cover the following general requirements. A policy statement identifying how the OCP amendment will fit within the existing OCP goals, such as promoting sustainable growth, enhancing quality of life, protect the preservation of the natural environment, foster a sense of community and promote identity of the village of Anmore, to achieve diversity in housing and to expand diversity of the tax base and employment opportunities. B, applications must demonstrate that they will contribute to the achievement of the goals outlined in the official community plan. Applications must assess and address the impacts of proposed development on the natural environment. And then D, applications must demonstrate that they provide benefit to the community and enhancement of the quality of life of residents. Then E, applications must incorporate housing options to meet the varied needs of different income levels, life stages and lifestyles that represent the region. F, applications should contribute to the diversification of the tax base in the village of Anmore. And G, applications must ensure opportunities to provide consultation and feedback to the public, persons, organisations and authorities it considers to be affected on the proposed development. And finally H, applications must align with the objectives of the regional growth strategy. Within my report, I kind of put a little bit of context on why I put H in here. It's important to note that as 2050 Metro Vancouver is going forward, that we as a community have to actually provide a context statement around this into the future as well. So whenever someone comes forward with an OCP amendment, we should have that in our minds as well. Okay, and then generally, an application process, I've kind of put some high-level documents that should be required in an application. This is a general list. It isn't limited to. Council could always request more information going forward. It's a general list I think would be a good outline for people, any developer coming forward to have a request for this information. So biophysical inventory and analysis, that's basically a topographical plan that shows the general outlay of the land that they're proposing to develop. The potential of the land, so a conservation framework, categorization of potential development and conservation areas. So really that's just showing general areas within that land that could be developed in different ways. So it could be, hey, this should be a parkland, this could be commercial land, and this should be residential. Same, pretty close to the land use then, land use designation summary, including description of framing policies, an environmental assessment, archaeology, parks, where the parks would be contained, and trail plans, including where they would link into our existing plans, street plans, traffic assessments, and then water, sanitary and drainage conceptual strategies of how development would be serviced, financial assessments for both property taxes and preliminary review of how the amenities would be contributed. Economy, outlining the economic impact to the village. That would be such things as if the large development came forward and have an impact onto our fire services or police services, we'd be requesting information on that. Energy, outlining the energy policy, which policy they would be looking to aim for. Design illustrations is really just a general idea of what it might look like into the future. A really important part would be the context statement, initial language to be included within the OC bylaw amendment. Third-party referrals, so this would be a list of other parties which would be affected, such as First Nations, school districts, provincial government, and federal ministries, and then public consultation process. So that would be a general intake of all the information required for an OCP amendment. Once we received all that information, we then refer those documents to council. We complete a report, give a recommendation, and then council could then debate if it should go towards first reading. So the first reading would be the first application. The first reading, council could give a first reading to the amendment bylaw, decline the application, or defer the application for further consideration. Following, if first reading was considered, consultation would then happen with a number of third parties and other governments. Following that, we would provide a requirements letter, and if these requirements were met, we would then come back for second reading for council. Following the second reading, we would look for a public hearing to discuss the OCP with the public. And then 7, bylaw amendments could be continued to third reading. Here it's kind of a diversion here, depending on if the OCP application came forward with a rezoning or development permits. We could hold it at third reading until those requirements had been met, provided we didn't want to go to final reading of the OCP amendment. Or alternatively, if there wasn't an OCP amendment, a rezoning amendment attached to the OCP amendment, you could just provide it final reading going forward. So that's the general overview of an OCP amendment. Now it should be stated that generally if someone's coming forward for an OCP amendment, they'd typically be looking for a rezoning amendment as well.
Mr. Wood, can I just get 2 things of clarity? Number 1 is this is very similar to a rezoning that we would have within the village currently, where an applicant would come forward and then the village would issue what is it called? Sort of a list of things to do.
Yep.
Oh, what is that called again? I'm sorry, I just...
well, that's kind of like a PLR maybe.
A PLR.
That's more towards subdivision.
It's very more broad. This is much more detailed, but very similar to any rezoning a PLR gets issued. The other thing is I just wanted to add on number 2, were referral documents. I think it should be added into the committees as well.
Sure.
Yeah, just add the word "and committees," because normally with a development permits and we always usually run it through all the committees to get it, any sort of advice and comments from that. So, and I'll open it up. Or do you have a motion that you wanted to?
Yeah. So I suppose the motion on the floor could be that council direct staff to develop a policy corresponding procedure documentation for proponent-led OCP bylaw amendment application.
Okay, could I get someone to move that? Second, I'll open up for further discussion. Councillor Cryer.
Thank you. Thank you for the quick and thorough report at a very busy time for everyone. I have a bit further question to what Mayor McEwen just asked for clarification on. So relevant parties, that was my question. It would be committees, neighboring municipalities, who? would
First
be-
Nations,
Okay.
provincial government, could be Ministry of Environment, school districts.
Okay, perfect, that's all I need.
I would also say people like Saskatchewan Fire Force,
Yeah,
RCMP.
okay, thank you.
No. I've got Councillor Richardson.
So,
Could be like that.
so
You want to do-
just to add a few things, in section A, dark sky seems to be a strong theme of people. So I would probably add that in, it's mentioned a few times in the OCP. Likewise, a lot of this is driven by the Icona thing and a change to the designation of a special study area. So I think the OCP actually segments out 4 things. So I think there's an advantage to add an I to your list there on something if there's a specific OCP change to the special designation, and then pull in something like must consult with Port Moody, so that's specially laid out. I think that would be helpful. And then my last comment is I tried to do various examples and stick them in, like what would you have to amend if you change the density for CD, it's 1 number. If you wanted to do the hillside, it's a few numbers. If you wanted to do the special designations, a few paragraphs. If you wanted to do the thing that Icona was saying, it's a rewriting of the complete OCP. There are so many changes that are intrinsic on density, size, population, police, etc. So I'm just saying I'm recognizing the challenge that it could be this or it could be this, and I think that's exceptionally challenging. That's all.
Any comments or?
Yeah, I can respond to that. I'm trying to write this report as if it isn't just for Icona as well. I'm trying to keep it as broad as possible because there's other proponents in the village who could come forward with an OCP amendment in the future. So you're right, it's incredibly difficult to write a report just for one particular thing. I think it's trying to keep it as broad as possible, be able to receive and give some direction, like you said, Councillor Richardson. It could be a very small requirement in someone, and so that would be a conversation that staff would have, and then come to council saying, this is a very small amendment. However, we normally ask for this. In relation, I think we only need to just ask for this small detail at this point.
I just following up on that, I don't have a problem with adding the dark skies principle, which is currently in our OCP. However, I have I'm at issue with adding a further item I regarding reference to Port Moody. So I wouldn't put that in because this is a very generic generic model that's being put together. Ms. Elbert.
Yeah, and if I could add to what Mr. Boyd's last comment was, this would just be framework, broadly for any development. If a specific application comes before council, there's always opportunity when that application is introduced for council to ask for additional information or additional consultation or whatever council needs to see to be able to review that application. So that definitely exists at several points along the pathway in any of these processes.
And I would just add as well that an OCP amendment does run through, as it did with infill, the purview of neighboring municipalities as a sort of impact as well. I recall when the Flavel site was taken out as a special study area, there was a fairly lengthy Metro Vancouver piece that would be added as another layer to this as well for every designation. So.
Yeah, so just to comment to that, that's where people like Port Moody, Coquitlam, Belcara, would be referred to as well in an OCP amendment, if it was applicable.
Councillor Trowbridge.
Yeah, just on that point, is it contiguous communities or can it be anyone?
I think it could be anyone who might be affected by this. So it's kind of hard to cast that net to decide exactly who might be affected. I think it's just good neighbourly practice to provide information to other municipalities just so they know what might be going on in neighbouring municipalities.
And I can answer that a little bit. On an OCP amendment, it's just the neighboring municipalities. However, when it goes to the Metro Vancouver region, it is all municipalities because they will be voting on it. And I know that the recent thing that went through Metro Vancouver, Campbell Valley urban industrial area, and that was a very contentious thing, weighed on by the whole region as a whole. So. Okay, Councilor Weber here.
I think Councillor Richardson made a good point, and I may be starting to understand why Kona mentioned that the OCP application would be the first step. Normally, it's a rezoning application, and if you need to modify your OCP, it'd be 1 or 2 lines, but this is such a big potential change. Maybe it makes sense that the OCP would be amended before we even get into anything else. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think OCP is a really important document. That you know, there's a lot of consultation that happens during an OCP amendment process, and there's obviously the same that goes with a rezoning. That's why sometimes you might have both at the same time. However, a rezoning kind of adds even more requirements for information as well. So, in my opinion, I think you'd want a proponent to go through the first or second reading before really going to a rezoning, because if you're making them do a rezoning at the same time as an OCP amendment, yet you squash it at the OCP amendment, that would be a lot of work, which would, you know, not be necessary for them in the first place.
So any application that would require even a minor OCP amendment, the OCP should always be first?
They should at least run together, but if a larger proponent came forward, the OCP should be amended previously, because you can't have a rezoning that's contrary to your OCP.
Right, okay, that makes sense.
I think I would reference what, the latest OCP amendment that we did was infill. Right? We did a bunch of work beforehand with the infill, made sure there was community support. Councillor George.
Sorry, I don't want to labor this. Apologize. There is a requirement to align the OCP with 2050 in this case. Is that something that we would take on at the same time we're doing an amendment, which doesn't necessarily all align or become applicable to 2050? And do we have the horsepower to do that internally when it comes to, because we have 2 years, I think, once 2050 is ratified or whatever the term is, to produce the document showing we're aligned. It has to align with our strategic plan, it has to align with our actions, which currently our 2019 strategy, we haven't taken actions to align with that, and I think we need to correct all those things.
Yeah, so we're in an obligation to provide a context statement in regards to the 2050. So, you know, we will get a template from Metro for a statement to say, hey, to make sure it says X, Y, and Z within your context statement to make sure we're in line with 2050. But 2050 is quite a broad, you know, context. It isn't like you shall do this either. It's municipalities still have their own destiny in their own hands, even with 2050, for sure.
Yeah, it's basically 2040, keeping some other bureaucrats employed.
Okay, not seeing any other question. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Boyd. Now we will move on to the Fortis BC Nominate a Charity. Ms. Ellery.
Thank you. So this was before council at the last meeting, and council requested that we confirm whether 2 organizations, the Saxamat Volunteer Firefighters Association and Equipment Search and Rescue Society would be eligible for nomination. So I can confirm that they are both registered. Saxamat Fire Association is a charitable organization, as well as Coquitlam SARS, and they would both fit the criteria under the safety category of this, should council wish to nominate either of those organizations.
Well, I think we should certainly nominate, is it fitting to nominate both organizations, or do we have to just pick one?
Through the mayor, the letter says we invite each of you to nominate a local charity or nonprofit. So I think that would be suggesting that they would want just one nomination per community.
Well, and I know there's a bit of a time crunch because it's a week away, and I'm just wondering, because the Saxamat Volunteer Association is branched between the 2 communities, I'm just wondering if we should just go with the other one. Sorry, discuss.
The Coquitlam Search and Rescue was the other one.
Oh, the
Coquitlam Search and Rescue Society.
Okay. That goes to different communities as well. Yeah.
And then I think the third one that was mentioned by Councillor Cryer as being a registered charity, a charitable organization was Friendly Forest Preschool within Anmore.
I don't know where to go with this.
Yeah.
We have a week, it's short, it's a short list, so.
And there's no requirement to make a nomination. I don't recall that one has been done in the past, but, I mean, it looks like it's, something that comes up every year, so knowing that, it does come up this time of year, we certainly could diarize that for earlier in the spring next year, so that if council wishes for us to coordinate, perhaps with Belcarra for SVFD, or with other neighboring communities for Coquitlam-Sar and do some type of joint nomination, then we would have a little bit more time to do that if council wishes to go ahead that way.
Councillor Cryer.
I agree. I was going to suggest that we save this for next year. Also, in looking at the conditions, there needs to be a fair amount of information gathered from the organization, as well as their permission and a couple of other things that I think are going to be a little more labor intensive for you, especially with so much that's going on and the deadline being the 14th. But if we could do jointly with another municipality, you could share the workload on that. So they do it every year. I think we should try for next year.
Yeah, certainly we can look into that for next year. They didn't send us off the notice until mid-April, so knowing that it's coming ahead, we can put that in our calendars for a little bit earlier in March so that we can reach out to some of those community partners.
They never give much lead time, so we can be
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Cryer. I think we should mark this for next year, but I think the real true beneficiary of this would be the fire association, because again, as most people are aware, Fortis has a high pressure gas line that runs right through the middle of our municipality. So they should be willing to make sure that we have the adequate resources there in case anything were to happen. So that money could go towards something. So, okay, so we'll just simply defer that. Okay, on to the mayor's report. I just had a quick report. Just wanted to let you know that with the good weather, Bunsen Lake was closed, had 2 closes last weekend. I got notification that they actually closed the gate over capacity. So I'm glad we're getting started earlier on it this year. But yeah, I was quite shocked to see that. People are wanting to get out already. Last week I was in Ottawa for meetings and had the opportunity to meet with our local MP, Ron McKinnon. Had a great meeting, just talking about most things. We need some funding through Metro Vancouver for the Anmore wastewater treatment plant. They sort of indicated that they are in very a tight fiscal position right now. They don't want the credit rating, but they did say that their ultimate goal is by the spring to have inflation in the 0 to 2% range. So that means that interest rates will most likely be coming down in the near future. I also attended on April 29th the Tri-City Chamber Business Awards. Great event. A lot of local businesses getting up for awards. As of tomorrow, I won't steal your thunder, but I'm going to be at the MLGA representing Metro Vancouver, and as a trustee for the Municipal Finance Authority. I'll be speaking up there in regards to just local government issues. And then May 13th, we're going to all be involved in the May Day Parade in Port Coquitlam, and we've been invited to the Mayor's Breakfast, so really looking forward to that. Hopefully the weather will stay nice and our cars will keep running. So that's all I got. Councilor's report. Councilor Weber.
Yeah, you stole a bit of my thunder. I get to drive in the May Day Parade again, drive my classic car. I love doing that every year. Had a brief meeting with Icona the other day, talked about their upcoming application and asked a few questions. Didn't really learn too much that wasn't presented at the open house, just sort of waiting for the application. I want to thank Jordan Birch for doing the Ugly Christmas sweater. I think that was a great event. I was happy to help you. Big Red was actually running, so we were actually able to use it, which is kind of nice. It's down currently. And Bruce just left. I wanted to thank him for the video, and I wanted to thank him for the clarification. I didn't know the exact number. I knew he didn't do it for $75,000. So sort of timing that he mentioned that when we approved our budget. Full disclosure, Bruce did my website for for the election. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Carter.
Thank you, Mayor McEwen. Just a brief update for me. I too was at the Chamber of Business Excellence Awards on Saturday night. It was lovely. LLGA, I'm representing the village starting tomorrow. Very full calendar, very full schedule on Thursday. That just came out, so it'll be a jam-packed 2.5 days. Mentioned at my last update that I went to the Icon Open House and also did sit down with them to learn a little bit more about the forthcoming application. And as I mentioned, I spent most of my time eavesdropping and listening to the questions coming out of the folks in attendance. So it was good to actually get a nice, good view of the storyboards and learn a little bit more. And on another note, I will be participating in McHappy Day on May 10th. I'm angling for the drive-up window. And I don't know my location yet, but watch my Facebook page and come on in for Big Mac. To benefit, I should tell you, the Tri-Cities Homelessness and Housing, not just to see me, the Tri-Cities Homelessness and Housing Task Group, Kids Sport, and City Reach Care Society, who provides meals for our unhoused residents in the Tri-Cities as well as Burnaby and Surrey. Thank you.
Councilor Trowbridge.
Yeah, I just want to thank you, Jordan, again for the run and bringing it to Anmore and keeping it here. It's a huge demonstration that volunteerism is alive and well in our community, and I think it needs to be recognized. Another comment on the May Day parade in Poco. If you haven't been, regardless of not living there, it's an event that everybody should attend. It's really amazing. All the kids and families line the streets. Rain or shine, they're there and they're waving and smiling. It's an amazing thing. Also, there may be a requirement for another driver. Anmore supplies quite a few of the cars and drivers, and there may be a requirement for another driver. So if anybody's interested, just reach out to me. I'm not sure that that's the case, but it might happen.
Thank you. Chief Administrative Officer, Ms. Dollar.
Thank you. So just wanted to remind everybody that utility bills are out and they are due May 19th. So information on payment options is available online on the village website, where you can give us a call or pop into Village Hall. Scholarship applications are open until May 7th. And also just a reminder that we've noticed lots of reports lately of bear activity. So please make sure that you are not putting your bins out before 5:30 a.m. and they should be out by 7 a.m. and then locked up by 10 p.m. that evening on collection dates. Also, watering restrictions through Metro Vancouver have come into effect as of May 1st. And finally, the next regular council meeting scheduled for May 16th will be cancelled. And we will instead be holding, council will be going into committee of the whole meeting on May 30th. And the topic for discussion at that meeting will be the $1.73 million grant that was recently received from the provincial government for infrastructure needs, and how that is going to be allocated over the coming period of time. That's it for me.
And we'll have our new corporate secretary starting on Monday.
Yes.
So we're starting to fill some positions, so thank you. Open up to public question period. Anybody want to ask a few questions about operational needs of the village? 2-minute time that applies to speakers. Okay, seeing that, I'll call motion to.
There are some.
Well, okay.
Okay. We're being too polite. Two quick things here.
Okay.
Yes,
Oh, John, you might want to make a correction to your report. Like, Ron McKinnon is not our member of parliament.
I didn't say it was ours.
Oh, it seemed like that would be, so you're
No,
saying,
no,
Benita
I know.
Zarella is ours.
Granted.
Okay, you know that. And, okay, related to Chris's report, recommendations to council on the OCP amendment process, two things. I wondered if, on pages 2 and 3, sections A to H, if reference could be made to the relevant section of the OCP.
You know, I would ask, can you draft that in an email to us?
Okay,
That would be better, yeah.
And related to that, I was curious why H may not appear relevant to Anmore's OCP, so I wondered if that could be expanded upon. But reading this and having some knowledge of the OCP, it seems like what is happening here is not a minor amendment to the OCP, but sort of a dramatic rewrite, like Paul was referring to.
I would suggest put it in an email and send it out to us if you've got.
Okay, the other item related to that I was interested in, when I was researching this, it seems like all other municipalities that I found charge substantial fees for these applications. For example, Coquitlam is in the actual thousands of dollars. Even a pre-application review costs $1,308.
And we have those fees even for a simple PLR application.
So I wondered if fees were being included in this report.
This is just a very much a high-level overview, so if you have concerns about it, I would suggest just send us an email.
There will be fees.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
The fees are in our fees and charges bylaw, which is available on the village website.
Yeah.
Except they're not, this would not be included in that because we haven't done OCP amendments before.
Ironically, we have fees to collect an OCP amendment, but no actual procedure to amend the OCP.
The fees
Oh,
are
we do
there.
have fees, the fees are there.
Yeah.
We have-
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, very good, thank you.
Apparently my team's on top of it.
You're Goodington, 1815 East Road. Through the chair, I'd like to ask the mayor and his thoughts on Icona's latest proposal for Anmore South. For 2 years, Icona spoke consistently in favor of high density, with the exception of the peculiar 1 acre proposal that came just before the last municipal election. 8 months later, we're now back to a high density proposal. Does the mayor see this as election interference by Icona, or is Anmore immune from such things, or do you think it just can't happen here?
First question is no, and second of all, I haven't been to I wasn't at the open house. I don't know what they're proposing, so thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Bill Crocker, 485 Drive. Just wanted to ask, this is a major OCP amendment, and we have had an history of Anmore, we've had other OCP amendments, and those have been presented to a vote to the Anmore constituents. And I'd like to know if council is considering this, as it is such a major change to Anmore. And I'd like to point out that we have council members that were acclaimed during the last election and were not actually voted on. So we have 1 mayor that's voted on and 4 people that are acclaimed making a major decision on an OCP amendment.
So first of all, we don't have an OCP amendment in front of us. This is just a framework if one were to come forward, number one. Number two is you can't force people to run. So they are as elected as I am, and they have the same rights and wishes. So, you know, there's all sorts of people that could have run.
Yeah, and putting the OCP amendment, once we have a change framework as to what would be changed, will that be going to vote for the Anmore residents?
I highly doubt it. I don't think so.
Amendments have been voted on by Anmore residents previously.
OCPs have been?
Yes, they have.
Please.
In previous elections, we've had OCP amendments.
No,
that
we
Anmore
haven't.
could vote on, so we have.
Which one, please?
I believe we have a prior amendment. You can take a look at what the history of Anmore was.
I know it very
OCP
well.
Amendments. Been here since 1999, and we
Yeah.
have had that as an election
I've been
issue.
there.
So,
Yeah, and I was here, owned property since 1999 as well, and no, we've not.
and we have. So I'd like to know that would be going to the public.
I can't guarantee that. Thanks.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn? Moved, second, all